Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mistakes Were Made. This is a channel that I created to document my family's progress in debt reduction and eventual elimination. I will tell you from the offset, the dogs are out here in the living room, hanging out on the couch, so if you hear any weirdo noises or tip-tapping, it is probably them. But that's okay. We'll try and work around it. Every time I start talking, they seem to want to start making noises. So, it is what it is. Okay, so what we are working on today, for those of you who are new, we are going to do a budget with me for the second pay period of February. We do break our budget up by pay period because of how my check lands and how my partner's paycheck lands. It just makes sense to break the month up into two sections. So we are working on the pay period coming up, which is the 16th through the 29th. Okay, so we are going to be starting with our income, which we have $19.75 for me and $28.26.53 for him. Now, we are going to be putting in a rollover amount that may or may not be accurate. The day I'm doing this is the 11th of February, so we technically still have 4 days of the first pay period to get through. And life, you can only plan so much. So there is absolutely the opportunity for things to come through that we did not have budgeted, or an emergency to happen, or whatever that could make adjustments and affect what the rollover amount is. As a general rule, our rollover will be at least $200 because I do like to have a $200 buffer. And so it's usually, it'll usually be between $200 and $224 and something cents because of how I like to make the money that's going into our savings bucket end in either a 0 or 5. So it'll be, $125, $50, $175, $200, along those lines. So at least for now, based on how we're seeing the month going, based on our previous budget for the first pay period, the expectation is to have a rollover amount of $221.80. Now, again, that could change. And because the paycheck that comes in on the 15th for me, which pays towards the second half of the month, is the one where if I'm going to get a bonus, that's where we would see it. This amount could be different as well. But again, I would prefer to underestimate versus overestimate. So that's what we're going to go with. And let's put these together. 1975 is 28.26.53 plus 221.80 gives us $5,023.33. Okay, now we've got ourselves groceries. There are 2 weeks in this particular pay period, so that's $100 per week. We have our gas, we have pets, we have Prime. I guess I should have been saying $100 for gas, $160 for pets, $12 for Prime, $15 for AAA, clothes gets $5, gifts gets $5, Christmas gets $12, and I do have a little cheat sheet over to the side. So this, as much as I would love to say this is all memorized, it is not. Birthdays get 12. License, which you can see I did not spell right initially. I looked at it, I'm like, that does not look right. License gets 34 and taxes gets 42. Now, we do have some deviations here. The first one, as you can see, we skipped over, is this health subject. My partner, he was like, I think it would make sense to separate health out from grocery, because we go to Kroger, the Kroger equivalent in our area, which is Fred Meyer's. It is a grocery store, but it's got, a toy section, electronics section, clothing, shoes, housewares, all of that. So his thought, no one of the dogs is starting to snore. His thought was, you know, if we need to get aspirin or cough syrup or toothpaste, those health and beauty types things, it would be helpful to have a separate bucket for that, because it's not as often and it does eat into the amount of money we can spend on food. And to me, that made absolute sense. So we created a new one, and we are going to be funding it $20 per month or $10 per pay period. So we've got $10 for that. This garden planner, last pay period, I think it was, I think I talked about it a little bit. I did sign up for it. It's through the Farmer's Almanac, and we had a 7-day trial, and that trial is over. And I said, you know what, let's go ahead and try it. See if it is something that's worth having for the entirety of the season and beyond and everything like that. Is there a benefit to it? Is there something that we get from it that would make us want to keep the subscription beyond just that first year? So we went ahead and paid it. It's less than $35, 34 something. So what we're going to do is we are going to budget it. So we're going to do $4 per month. And then once it comes due again next February, we can kind of assess and see, do we really want to pay this? Did we utilize it to the extent that we feel it was worth the $35? And if not, then we'll just have, extra money that we can then allocate somewhere else. This fun bucket. Okay, well, this is a whole saga. So I'll try and keep it condensed. Bottom line is, this amount from my partner is much higher than it usually is. Typically, his share, or what gets put into our shared account, is $15.61. Now, every year we do see an influx of money around this time, and that's because his work has a policy that you can't. Yeah, dog. Hey, puppy. Yeah, what's up? What's up, big boy? What's going on? Yeah. Do you need to go outside? Do you all need to go outside? Okay, we are all going to go outside, and when we come back, they are going to be going to bed. So it'll just be a jiffy for you, but it'll probably be about 25 minutes for me. Okay, so we are back. So as I was saying, there's a little bit of a saga here. And honestly, I can't remember where I was in the explanation, but if I'm doubling up on something, hopefully I'll edit stuff out. So every year he gets a boost to his pay because his company has a limit on how much PTO they want people to have as of a certain date. So if you have more than that level, then they go and they pay out the difference. So these are arbitrary numbers. Say the limit is 100 hours. If you have 150, they're going to pay out 50 hours to you at this, time of year. Now, what I understand is something went wrong with that process, and they paid out too much PTO. Now, I did ask him for clarification. Was it that they should have only, if we go with the 150 example, they should have only paid out 50, but maybe they paid out 100 because that's what the limit is, and so they swapped it on accident? Or is it they paid out the right amount, the PTO number hours were right, but they paid more money than what that would have actually garnered? And he said, no, my understanding is they paid out more PTO than they should have. So this number is a little bit suspect at this time, but we're going to run with it for the budget. But where this fun category comes in was when we were in that lovely period where we didn't realize that this money was not 100% accurate. So what I had determined was typically 1561 is what we get. This is about $1,250 or so dollars more than that. It is due to his pay and stuff that he had earned, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, not that the pay that comes in any other time isn't the same situation, but, you know, it was extra. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we say 1,000 of this? You kind of decide, how do you want us to utilize it? And so he thought about it and he came back with, well, why don't we do $500 into a fund bucket and $500 to our emergency fund? And his explanation for the fund bucket is it's a little bit different than our typical entertainment cash envelope in that it would stay viable until the funds run out. Whereas with our entertainment one, we can use, you know, all as much money as in there, but at the end of the month, anything left over gets moved to a miscellaneous envelope, and then we start fresh again. So this one would not reset at the end of the month. And I just thought, you know, that sounded like a great idea. But then I did go back, you know, with a counter offer. And I said, you know, why don't we keep the fund, you know, amount as is? But how do you feel about us taking, instead of the full 500 to go to the emergency fund, we do half of it, so 250 to emergency fund, and then 250 towards debt? And he was good with that. Well, once he came back with the information that there may be an oopsie in here, that whole plan kind of got shelved. Now, that said, I did still want to be able to fund the fun envelope just at a lesser amount, and because I kind of know why he wanted to do that in particular. So we are doing $200 as a general rule, as you've seen from previous, you know, budget with me's and recaps and stuff like that. We typically have a couple hundred to several $100. Sometimes we've been as lucky enough to have $1,000 extra dollars in a particular month that's unallocated, and we had been moving it over to savings. Since we've met our goals and we don't need to do that anymore, I felt confident and comfortable with, you know, having 200 move over to this temporary bucket. And frankly, you know, February, it's not just the Valentine's Day month, but it's also his birthday is at the end of the month, and 4 or so days after Valentine's Day is our anniversary. And I know that there is a very specific place he wanted to go for our anniversary, and we're celebrating 18 years, which isn't anything to sneeze at. But the place is a little bit more on the expensive side, so I could very, very easily see us spending $125, $150, you know, just for that. So putting the $200 aside for there, I thought that was quite reasonable. Okay, so with that in mind, we are going to do addition of all of these items and see where we land. Make sure that my cheat sheet is accurate, that I do have here on the side. And yes, $811. So 502333 and 811. That means we have 4212.33 left over. So we will put that down here. Okay, so then credit card payments for this pay period, we have $225 for B of A. Now this is something where after we did our adjustment and paid off 2 of our credit cards by transferring those balances over to a new credit card that had a 0% promo, that opened up money in what we had previously budgeted. to be used. And so that overage or that extra leftover, however you want to call it, that snowball amount, we decided to apply to B of A. So we are now, instead of doing $150 a month, we're doing $450. I did want to kind of even that out between the two pay periods. So we are doing $225 each pay period. Discover is getting $250, so we are at $475. Put that down here at the same time. Mortgage still hasn't changed yet, though I'm sure it will. So for this pay period, it's $840. That is the amount that we are charged twice a month because we pay it every other week. And by doing that method, we essentially get an extra payment in. Excuse me. That's going to go up sometime. I wish our full mortgage payment was only $840, but sadly, that is not the case. So we're going to take that amount, we're going to add $475 for the credit cards, and we're going to add $840 for the mortgage, which brings us to $2897.33. And we'll pop that down here as well. Now then, for recurring monthly costs, most of these are going to be a fairly regular amount. Some of them, but two of these at least that we're noting here are variable because they are utilities, the electric bill, and the gas bill. Now, the electric bill, we typically know ahead of time what the actual cost is going to be when we're doing the budget for the second pay period because of just what time that account cycles, and because it cycles before it comes due. So we do know $176.15. That is crazy days. Typically, we've been budgeting about a guesstimate of $150. We had one month where it was like $157, but then last month it was only $140. And unfortunately, they did pass an increase of 18%. And from what I understand, they are trying to work with whatever government body, whatever, I don't know what it is, to have the opportunity to increase costs again. I don't know if that's like for a temporary period or if that's like just an increase that goes on forever to help pay for the costs of the snow and ice storm that came through. I've heard stories and read them like on Nextdoor and other things of people who are just getting hammered by the costs for energy, for electricity, especially. We are in the winter. And just the idea that they might be able to increase rates even more, gruesome. The gas bill, this one we don't know what it'll be, so we are using our estimate of $150. Our cell phone bill is typically stays the same at $98. Comcast. Okay, so $101. That's what we've been paying for a while. And as I mentioned during a previous video, they had said that there would be a $10 credit that we are eligible for and would be having applied to our account because we do auto pay and it goes through our checking account. Well, January, I did not see that credit because it was still $101. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something in the timing. And so, but February should definitely see it. Well, February came around and it's $101. So I went online. I'm like, what the heck? I checked the account and I looked at our statement and lo and behold, they are already applying that $10 on there. I was like, okay. Well, sneaky sneaks, they actually raised our internet bill by $10. But then we are also getting this $10 savings or credit. So essentially our bill did not change. So I mean, I don't know, it feels sneaky to me, but at the same time, I would much rather continue paying what I'm paying than paying an extra $10 more. It's just, it felt kind of grody. we have $25 that goes every month into our emergency fund. And then we also have $100 that we pay each pay period. And this was part of money that was going into the bucket for job loss coverage. Now, we did used to have a sinking fund option up here for $185, but we've completely eliminated that because we are not saving money in the cash envelopes any longer. We've gotten to the $500 that we wanted in cash for that particular bucket, and everything else we were going to just automatically transfer over into the savings. But now that we've presumably, if everything's gone well last pay period, we've met that goal, we are not going to actively be putting in a specific amount every month like we were before. So though this is still being called out in our recurring monthly costs, we know that this has kind of an asterisk towards it, and it will be going towards debt specifically. So even though, as we get through to the end and we have presumably some extra money that's unallocated that we haven't actually assigned to something, and we'll be using at least some of that for debt, this $100 will be going towards debt on top of whatever else we determine. So the other thing you might notice or recall is not here is our water bill. I'm sure you can tell by my voice that there's had been a slight issue with that. So previously, the idea that I came up with was I wanted to even out the cost of the water bill across the pay periods or across the months. So where it's usually about $240 and it comes out every even month, I said, okay, let's cut that in half. So every single month we are calculating an amount. And then I had this convoluted, very complicated way of how we were going to track the extra money and hold it until the next month so that it could be paid out during the right time frame. It was a mess. We backed away from that pretty quickly. And based on some guidance and suggestions from people in the comments, we settled on let's try a pay ahead option. So essentially on the months where it's not due, we'll make the payment, the half the payment, and then on the month that it is due, we'll pay the balance. If that doesn't work, then the next option was we would just put the $121 from the non-pay month into savings and then transfer it back into the account during the month that it is due and pay the whole thing off at that time. So on the 25th of January, we made our payment. The system said, yep, that's been accepted, good to go. I was like, great. That said, on the 31st, when the system cycled or whatever, the cycle came through, we got an email saying, hey, okay, your bill is due, your water bill is due. It's $233. Now, granted, that is, about $7 to $8 less than it usually is. So we didn't use as much water, but it's still $233. And I'm like, okay, so there's a couple of options. Either we didn't see the reduction we thought, and we actually used way more water. So that $121 got absorbed and there's still $233 that needs to be paid, or something has gone wrong with the payment that we made. So first thing I did was I checked our account, and yep, we showed that $121 came out and went to our water company. It did actually come out on the 29th, not on the 25th, but it had come out. So went on to the account, and I'm taking a look, and at this point, it's the 1st. I'm looking at this on the 1st. And I'm like, why does this show that we owe $233? And when we got the notification, it also said, hey, your auto pay amount is going to be $233. So of course I wanted to look into this. And I look and and in the payment area, it does show that $121. but the full amount is still there. And I did check the usage. No, it wasn't a case of that we actually owed, 350 something. It was 233 is the full amount. So I'm looking, I'm like, okay, why is it not applying this payment? So then I was like, okay, maybe the auto pay is creating a problem. So I turned the auto pay off, gave it a little bit of time, and then I looked again, thinking maybe it would now that auto pay is off, it would recalibrate or recalculate and say, oh, wait, there's a payment here. It didn't. So it was already after time to call. So I went ahead and wrote to the billing email address that they had available in their contact me area. And I was like, hey, we made a payment on the 25th, but it doesn't seem to be applying. When we got our notice of, that the amount was due, it was for a full amount, $233, but because we made this payment, it should be something like $112. Can you please take a look and verify that, yes, you received the payment, because it did come out of our checking account, and that is applying here, and we do truly only owe $112. And if you wouldn't mind, can you let us know, why did this situation happen in the first place? So very quick response the next day. So this is the 2nd of February. We did get a response back, and they said, yep, everything is cool. Your payment did come in. You only owe $112. And she said the reason that this happened was the payment that you made didn't actually come into our system until the 31st, which is the day that the statement was generated. And so it didn't take into account that payment. But everything's good, and if you want to, set up your auto pay again, go ahead and you can do it online, or you could call us. We can set up, because I did put in the email that I canceled the auto pay, thinking, hey, maybe that would trigger something. I was like, all right. I went and I looked online, and sure enough, it was now showing only $122, and that the payment had been made. It had all the same other information that was there before. And great. That's all well and good, but what I didn't understand, and what the explanation given doesn't really cover, is why, when I went in on the 1st, did it not show that payment if the payment came through and registered on the account on the 31st? It was not there when I went and looked. The full amount was showing as owing. So I don't understand why there was this problem. And I wasn't super satisfied with the explanation given, because it doesn't account for that discrepancy of, okay, that's great if it came in on the 31st, but if that's the case, then when I went and looked at it on the 1st, it should have shown me the $112 as the remaining owing balance, not the full 233. So I don't know. We're going to still do this process with the water where we pay each month, but the reason why it is not showing up here for the second pay period like it normally would be, because it's due on the 16th, is because of all that rigmarole and the fact that we made the payment on the 25th, it didn't come out of our checking account until the 29th, and it didn't supposedly come into their system until the 31st, so 6 days later. We are moving that payment to the first pay period, because I want to make sure, if we're making these payments, whether it's during the off month or the actual pay day month, that those are getting in there in enough time that I can go and contact them, be like, look, I made this payment. It's been 5 days. I don't see it. What's going on? Obviously, this first experience with going this route was not super smooth, so my level of cynicism is high with how things are going to go. But we're going to continue. We're going to give it a try in March and April as well, and see if it works a little bit more smoothly. And if not, then we'll figure out a different option. We did actually make that remaining $112 payment in the first pay period. So now, because the second pay period is still another 5 or so days away. So that's why we're not seeing it here, and it will mean there's a little bit of a discrepancy when we do our recap for the first pay period of February. But so that's where we are. So we have 176.15 plus 150 plus 98 plus 101 plus 25 plus 100 gives us, oh, that looks weirdo. Gives us $650.15, and we're going to take that from what we have left, the $2,897.33, which leaves us with $2,247.18. Okay, I like to keep that $200 buffer. So that's going to drop that down to $2,047.18. Okay, so now here's where we get into the how the heck are we going to deal with the fact that we potentially have too much money. And one of the options that the company, my partner's company, has to rectify their mistake is to pull the equivalent money, if they give back the PTO, out of his next paycheck. And what we came up with was we decided, okay, if you normally get $1,561, what is the difference that makes from this extra amount we have? And actually that's not, the calculation was wrong. We needed to take that from the full amount. So 2826.53 minus 1561 leaves $1,265.53. So what we're going to do, and we're actually going to do this at the beginning of the month, is we're going to take $1,265 and move it over to savings. Now, this isn't to use it as for the job buffer savings. No, this is now going to go into savings so that we can see how is his next paycheck affected by this issue. And I am praying that whatever fix they've decided that they're going to do, that they do it for this next pay period, because I do not want it lingering over our heads that at some point they're going to take some unknown at this point amount of money out of his pay, and so we'll have a short amount, and so we're going to have to, constantly be carrying it and worrying about it and things like that. I have enough stuff that is just kind of out there looming over us and over our future. I do not need one more thing. So fingers crossed that they figure out how they're going to make the fix and they implement it immediately, and we can go from there. But with that in mind, we will have this 247.18. We are going to take 1265 from that. So that means we have $782.18 left. So that's what we are going to use to do our calculations now. And as I mentioned, previous people are like, hey, why don't you not go full bore with whatever unallocated amounts you have now and put it all towards debt? Why not do a 75-25, which makes sense. I got very, 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 very excited, incredibly excited about the idea that we would finally be in a position where we could start making some significant payments towards debt. I'm not saying it's like going to be huge, but it's fairly significant. And so caution was thrown to the wind, and I'm like, yes, the whole amount, we're just going to, whatever's left over besides our buffer, it's all going to debt. And, a few of you more level-headed people kind of reeled me back in and said, You don't know what life's going to throw at you. Everything out there is still kind of in an unknown. Maybe just you do a ratio. And absolutely, you guys were absolutely right. As exciting and wonderful as it is that we have met this particular benchmark, there is nothing such as being too prepared or anything like that, especially for this kind of situation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the 782.18. I'm just going to say 782. We are going to take 25% of that. So that would leave us with $586. We're not going to do the 50 cents. That will be available for us to pay towards debt. And then we're going to do the 782 again, and we're going to subtract. Yeah, that was right. Let's try that again. 782 and subtract 75%, which gives us $195. Again, we're not going to deal with the 50 cents. And so that will go into our bucket that we are holding for when my job goes away. So if we take 195 plus 586, that's 781. That leaves us with $1.18. Well, we also had 18 cents over here. So 118 plus, oh, no. That was wrong. There's only the 18 cents. Sorry. So with that, we have $200 plus the 118. So we'll have 201.18. Ooh, it's getting myself confused. So that will be the amount that we roll over for the first pay period in March, plus the expected pay for those. So 201.18 plus 1975 plus 1561 gives us 37.18. So that's what we are going to assume, if everything goes to plan or to our sort of plan, we will have for the next budget. Now, if it turns out that they make the decision, as far as this overpayment is concerned, that they're not going to do anything unless somebody comes to them and says, hey, I'd rather have the PTO that you paid out in error back in my bucket, so that they then have to pull money from a check, from the person's next check. And so we would actually still have this full amount available. Or if they just do an across the board and say we are reversing the extra, and that extra that they would be taking out of his pay is less than this amount. So, we would then have that to augment whatever the reduction is. Whatever's left over here, bottom line, we will then apply the same rule of 75% will go to debt and 25% will go to savings. So that's the goal. I'm really, really, really hoping they make a decision in the next few days. His next paycheck does come out on this Friday. So I'm and he's at work right now. I'm kind of hoping that there's been some kind of communication and he can be like, hey, this is what the plan is. Love having all those things up in limbo. But you know what? To that end, we are going to do our budget recap for the first pay period of February. That'll be coming out after this one, once we've actually closed the month out. We are also going to be doing a cash stuffing for the second pay period of February. And I think between those two videos, I might put out a video just kind of talking about this pending job loss situation. What's the newest info? What have we done over this time period to be prepared? Kind of what are we seeing as being the potential process and progress that we'll be making? What does it look like out there, at least for me, for the job hunt? All those random things. How's our mental health dealing with all of this? All of those kinds of things that we are working through and are going through our minds now anyway. It probably would still be a video like this. I'm still still not a huge fan of being in front of the camera, and even though I say we, it's my partner will not be part of the video. I mean, I would say, if you have any questions in particular you would like me to cover during a video like that, definitely put that down below and I'll try to make sure that I include that. And so if you have any questions for him, I can certainly ask him. I will not guarantee that he will want to necessarily participate, but I will put the questions towards him. Yeah, this has been something else. So yeah, I think I'm going to take that up an opportunity to just kind of do a video about just the scenario and the situation that we're in general, and touching, a little bit on budget stuff and everything, but it won't be, getting into these specific numbers or anything like that. Whew. So yeah. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer in that kind of format, let me know. I'll do my best with there. If you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas about this particular budget, comments, things like that, please drop them below. I very much appreciate everybody's encouragement. And as you can see with some of the adjustments we have made to our budget now and in the past, we do look at all of those suggestions and the ones that we feel fit our situation and what we're trying to accomplish best, we do actually implement. And others, we may not implement them, but we keep them in the back of our mind, because everything is in flux. Things are changing fairly regularly, and we're going to be eventually transitioning into a new situation, and something that somebody else has recommended in the past may become more pertinent at that point, and we'll want to implement it then. So it's this has been such a wonderful community as far as support, guidance, ideas, just showing how they're going through what they're going through, and putting it out there so that folks can glean from it what they will. So on that note, this has become a fairly long video, and I do apologize. I try to keep these short, but I guess I just get to chit-chatting, and that I find that much easier when the camera's not on me. But anyway, I am going to bring this to a close. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope that you decide to subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, I appreciate the time that you spend watching what we do. So we will see you in the next one.